All right, Dean, you ready to go?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, everyone. We did one of these last week for those who didn't see it. Daytime sword fishing has become, I've got to say, the fastest growing productive offshore fishery we're doing. It was 10 years ago, nobody did it. 5 years ago, a few guys were doing it and they were catching well and kept it a big secret. The secret's basically out, but what people don't really talk about is, once you're really good at this, it's almost automatic. I don't want to say it's automatic, but it is. Um, Dean had a day, which I'm sure he'll speak to. What did you get? 8 bites on was your best day so far? Think
Yeah.
about that. 8 swordfish bites in just a day. So it's something to really consider spending a lot of time learning. There's definitely some technical stuff to it. You want to pay attention. You do it right, you're going to get bit. And there's a lot of times, July and August, the fishing's slow, but you can get out there and do this and catch just a fish of a lifetime. So, Dean, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Um, Thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to cover the daytime sword fishing. I'd like to just acknowledge the other speakers, some phenomenal presentations before me. And without further ado, we'll jump right into this. This is going to be daytime sword fishing. I'm going to call it fluke fishing of the deep. And it's just kind of a play on it, but it really is pretty simple fishing. We're fishing 1 to 2 rods at most. Pretty simple, easy fishing. It's one of the reasons that a lot of people in the sport are gravitating towards it because it's pretty relaxed fishing. Once you know what you're looking for and once you have the equipment set up, you're only fishing a few rods and you can relax and make a pretty nice day of it, especially if you have the right weather. A couple things there to add. You really do need the right weather. You want to be fishing in 10 knots or less, 15 knots of wind at the very most. When you're fishing deep, so fishing off the bottom, anywhere from 800 to, let's just say, 1,800 feet, you want to be fishing straight up and down. And the easiest way to get straight up and down is with weight and with neutral weather. And what I mean by that is just light weather condition. Okay, so light weather on the current and light weather on the wind. I have a couple pictures here. This is one of our biggest fish caught to date. This was 475. This was caught in December off the bottom, Norfolk Canyon. I was fishing with the guys in the Going In Deep. And I just want to throw out a couple of things here. You can see all of us are taking some great glory shot, but I want to talk to you guys about how we have the cockpit laid out. You can see we have a 130 in the rod holder. We were fishing some tuna baits. We have the LP. You see Justin has his hand on it. That's in the corner. We've got safety lines. We also have our rigging kit right here. Got a couple of sorted weights, some electrical tape, some skewers, some cutters, a cloth, right? You can see our little spool of small mono, light mono we were rigging baits with. Everything is centrally located, all ready to go. And it's something you guys want to get in the habit. Everything in fishing is preparation meets opportunity. So you want to make sure you're prepared all around. You can see we have our balloons there for our far floaters. We have the harpoon baskets. It's all there, center line, ready to go. So it's just a really good picture to show you what we're doing there. And then finally, we have the all tackle world record. I like to throw this in all of the presentations I do, but this is really just an interesting record because it just hasn't been broken in almost, what we got, 60 years now, essentially. So 58 years, 1,182 pounds. It's a big fish caught in 1953 off the coast of Chile. I mean, just a big fish and close to 1,200 pounds. And they really are creatures of the deep. They look Jurassic. They're extremely hard fighting fish. So we'll dive right into it. Okay, just a little bit here about the swordfish. They're found essentially in every ocean, minus the Bering Sea, Caspian Sea. They are not by the Suez Canal, and as you can see up here in the Persian Gulf, but they're distributed elsewhere. So warm temperature, tropical climate, semi-tropical, they're all everywhere. Just like I said, I've already covered the tackle world, all tackle world record. Common depth, 80 to 6,300 fathoms. In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, I'm going to just talk about the East Coast. We used to see these fish commonly in 20 fathoms and offshore. We're typically starting to see our swordfish in 100 plus fathoms. So that means essentially a canyon. So we have seen a lot of fishery pressure on these fish over the last 40 years, from long lining, bottom trawling, etc. but we're really 100+ fathoms is where you need to be to start to target these fish. And they're going to be feeding on the bottom during the day. So they're going to be following that DSL, deep scattering layer. And that's where that bait layer is going to be. So during the day, it's going to be further down to the bottom. At night, it's going to come up to the top. So that's what they're going to be following. And that's why we see them in these just all sorts of depths everywhere. We're just going to break this daytime sword fishing presentation down into 6 key elements here. We'll talk about the structure and the depth, most productive real estate. We'll talk about the bait. All right, what we're doing with rigging the baits. We're going to talk about rigging with the terminal tackle. We'll talk about the execution. We'll talk about setting out. We'll talk about end game. And finally, I'm going to hit taking care of the catch. I think it's very important that when you kill the fish, you kill it right. And I'll explain that. A couple of stats here, just our catch stats. 2019, we were running both boats. We had about 15 swords. This year, 2020, we had about 15 swords. So it was pretty good sword fishing for us by our standards. Keep in mind, we did a lot of day trips. We were doing a lot of charter fishing. So that meant we were fishing that inshore triple Rex area chunking, and we were running out to the canyon either in the afternoon or the morning or vice versa. So we're not always fishing at night for these things. And we did a lot of our swordfish killing, or swordfish harvesting rather, during the day. Okay, so structure and the depth. Right here I have a picture of the toms. Okay, it's sort of the terms of fishing below the Hudson. It really is a mecca for day timing. And what I mean by that is you've got a lot of really good real estate here. So a couple of things we're looking for. We're looking for those tight, steep contours. You'll hear me talk about this often. You really need to have a bathymetric chart. If you don't, you need to get one on the boat. And the bathymetric chart is just going to show you the contour lines. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of really key areas here. So this is the May, Hendrickson, northeast corner of the Toms, tip of the Toms, southwest bend, southwest corner. Okay. And we have finally the South Toms area. Okay. And Berkeley Canyon. So all of these little crevasses are excellent places to start day timing. And what we're doing there is we're going to work these areas for about 30 minutes. If we don't have a bite, we're going to move to the next area. And what that means is we'll start here and we'll just work very methodically. We'll start here towards the tip of the May, right in about 1,000 to 1,200 feet of water, right in that steep area. And if we don't have a bite, we'll move to the next area, Hendrickson. We'll try the east tip of the Hendrickson. If we don't have a bite, we'll keep moving. We just keep moving, covering ground. And I like an area like the Toms because it gives you a lot of options, right? You can start up here in the May and work south, or you could even work here. You could start in the South Toms and work up. You also have the Carteret here down in the southwest, which is another very productive area. But once we get a bite, we'll pretty much stay in that area because we've intercepted a sword and we've intercepted some bait. Those fish are feeding on the bottom around bait. So I'm going to go into that a little bit here later, but I just want to give you the exact overall of what we're doing here in terms of bottom structure. A couple other really great areas to fish. You have the Wilmington here. This is for the South Jersey folks, okay? Again, you have the northeast corner. These are all really productive areas. East Bend, West Notch, southwest corner, and then the Hayes areas, okay? A lot of the really great top daytime boats that are working in the Hayes area. They're also working the northeast corner. All of these areas will produce, and it's no different. They're all the same. Really great structure. So here on the northeast corner, these guys are going to fish a little bit deeper, 800 to 1,200. Right in here in the Hayes, again, they're going to hit that magical 1,000 to 1,200 feet. And it's just going to be right in this little pocket. That's what these guys are doing, and that's what they're the areas they're targeting. Same thing here, Poor Man's, okay? In South Poor Man's, they're working these little steep little notches. And again, this area of Poor Man's too, you can go right in the natural Poor Man's and work your way south, and you've got plenty of real estate all the way down the line, just fishing these little points. So for 2020, what we saw, some of our best areas, we had, again, 100 Square, the Hudson. I'm going to attribute a lot of this to the reason it was a top area is that the fleet was fishing there. With the swordfish, typically, as long as there's bait, they're going to pour into those canyons. Come around August, September, October, November, those are the prime season for this. A little earlier in the season, June and July, you will intercept swords. It's mostly going to be a daytime event. I'm going to caution you, though, you will hook giants doing this. So you're starting to see the fleet kind of shy away from fishing in June and July for the swords because it's not productive, and it's really hard to put enough drag on the tackle systems we're using to catch these swords when you start getting into giants. So I'll talk about that a little bit later when I talk about the tackle, but I just want to throw that out there. Getting back into this, 100 square was a great area, and it was all prismed around the tip of the Jones, niche, 100 square area. Pretty much the same place we caught the big eyes. Now, this is the best structure, but it's also big eyes and the swordfish have similarities. They're DSL feeders, so they're feeding on that deep scattering layer. So pretty much all around here in a given day, throughout the season, the second half of the season, August, September, October, November, this is where the best action was, right in this prism of structure. And again, it's finding the bait, working it from there. One of the swordfish we caught with the members was right here in the tip of the Jones. So we were working a little bit deeper this year. We found that fishing in 1,300 to 1,600 feet of water with the bait about 400 feet, 300 to 400 feet off the bottom was better. And that's just, every year is going to be different. It's just about figuring that out. And it breaks into the most important part. Once you have the theory and the knowledge, you need to have the communication. Just that extra 10% of knowing to bring that bait 400 feet off the bottom, that started to make and break our trips and really yield a productive harvest. In 2019, we noticed that fishing just 900 to 1,000 feet with the bait 100 feet off the bottom was the ticket. So we did notice that change, and we adjusted accordingly. And again, same thing, the guys in the Wilmington, they saw the same thing as well. Again, fishing the Hayes and the northeast corners as well. So bait. Swordfish are all about bait. So right here, I just have a picture of the fish finder. I kind of stretched it out for you guys so you can really see it. But I wanted to just highlight, this was taken at night, but it's applicable to during the day. You're not going to see the same type of picture, but I just wanted to show you what's happening when we bring the bait up and down. Okay, so this is actually our sinker here, and that's actually the bait, and this is the fish. We were bringing it up, we saw the fish, we dropped it down, and the fish actually followed our bait. As you can see, started here, we dropped it, it leveled off, fish came with it the whole time. And as you can see, it came back up here as I brought the bait back up. Those fish will follow us, okay? All of this is underneath the thermocline. You want to pay close attention to that. 90% of the time, the swordfish bites will come underneath the thermocline, all right? Now, I understand, granted, this is a daytime pic, but it's applicable to, excuse me, it's a nighttime picture, but it's applicable to daytime fishing because it goes to illustrate what we're doing with the bait, constantly staying with the bait. If you can drive around and you see on the bottom, say you're fishing 1,200 feet of water, you put the recorder out to 1,400 feet, you drive around on the bottom, you look around for bait. If you can drop on that bait, that's going to really put you in a much better position. Those swordfish are on the bottom, swimming around, looking for that bait. And if you can put your bait around the bait marks, really increase your catches. A little bit about the water. All of our fishing at Canyon Runner in the canyons is going to be centered around water, except for this fishery. The water really doesn't matter, with the exception of June and July. Early season in the canyon, the fish come in on the water, especially the swordfish. Once August sets in, those fish are there. They're just going to naturally gravitate towards the bait. So again, the water temperature can be anything from 50 to 82 degrees. That water is much less meaningful. You want to work really good structure and find
Phil,
bait.
Hey, Dean, can you just go back to, because we have a lot of these questions, and right there, just go over a little bit of, what transducer you like, your settings, just touch on the electronic aspect.
Okay, so we get these common questions often. I want to highlight a couple of things of what we're doing with our system. So we have a B275, which is an Airmar B275 transducer, LHW, which stands for low, high, and wide. So what that means is it's a wide angle transducer on the low frequency and high frequency side, and it is chirp. And as you can see here, I set the fish finder up so we can look at both high chirp and low chirp. Our screen on the Canyon Runner is 16 inches. So all of our marks are going to look bigger. I've also stretched this out so you can really see, for your viewing pleasure, guys, so you could really see what we're doing here. But I just wanted to show you guys following. This is our sinker. That's our bait. And this is the fish. And you can see here, the screen scrolling from right to left. So this was the picture of where the bait was, okay, at 225. And we brought the bait down to 275. And we incrementally brought it up. And the fish followed us the entire time. You could see here, when we chose to set this line at 275, we were underneath the thermocline. And that's very important. You can also see here, we had a second bait down here close to, where are we here? Yeah, we're close to 475. And you can see down on the low side. Now the lines are perfectly underneath the boat in order for us to do this. So they're within the cone. Does that answer everyone's questions?
Yep.
Couple things about hunting swordfish. They are makos without jaws. So what does that mean? I took the anatomy of a swordfish and an anatomy of a mako rather, and I just wanted to give you guys a comparison. They're very, very identical. They're mostly all flesh, skeletal backbone. The swordfish has the bill, the mako has the jaw. And what does that mean? They aren't going to be line shy. They aren't particularly finicky with the baits. It's mostly about getting a bait in front of them, and you will get some sort of commitment out of the fish or some sort of bite. They're very similar to the mako fishing. Craig touched on it, really adamant about having fresh bait for scent, but it's just about getting a bait down there. So you don't have to worry about, and I'm going to cover it in the tackle, leader size, light, all of that. We'll show you some suggested guidelines, but other than that, it's really about getting the bait in front of the fish. Terminal tackle. For a daytime setup, the number one reel out there for this is going to be an LP 1200. It was designed for bottom fishing. It's got high retrieval. It's going to be 12 volt DC power. They now make variable speed 24 volt models, variable speed 12 volt models. We have regular 1200 reels on the boat. Or if you wanted to go hand crank, an 80 wide. The reason you need to go with an 80 wide at the bare minimum is you need the beefed up gearing inside the reel. So Shimano or a Penn or an IU Technos, they all have beefed up hand hardware because you're going to put a lot of torque and strain on this particular tackle. And you also want a 2-speed reel. You'll put it in low gear and wind it up much quicker. If you are going to go with a hand crank setup, I suggest you get a rod hookey. It goes on the back of the drill and it just winds up the reel for you. You can just put it right on the back of the drill and go. It'll wind it up a lot faster. In terms of a rod, there's a bunch of really good ones out there by the major manufacturers, Black Hole, CalStar, Seeker. It's all about the same. Basically, you want an 80 to 50 class rod. So that means the back end of the rod is going to be stiff. It's going to be in the 80 class, but the tip is going to be at about the 50. Reason being, you want something that can hold your weight. You're going to put a lot of weight on this, so you're going to be fishing anything from 5 to 10 pounds. But you also want something light enough and supple enough so you can see the bite. Because a lot of times it's just a quick twitch. That's all there is. So you want something that's got some beef to it on the back end, but light on the front end. Main line, these guys are using anything from 60 pound to 100 pound braid. I'm going to suggest you stick with the braid because it cuts much easier and you can lessen the weight. The least amount of weight you're fishing with, the better off your bait's going to be presented. That's a giant tuna fishing trick. So you want to fish fairly straight up and down. So you do want some weight, but if you don't have to fish 12 pounds, don't fish 12 pounds. Up here in the Northeast, we're fishing about 5 to 6 pounds on average. So again, we have weights of all sizes from 4 to 10 pounds, and we have multiples. Okay, the last thing you want to do on a 100-mile trek out to the canyons is only have one lead. Okay, so go out, make the investment. One of the best little fixes I found with containing your lead, because they're pretty big. This is a 1 foot stick lead. Get a milk crate, take some rubber mat, zip tie it to the bottom, and you can just fire your weights right in there. Take it right off the boat when you're done, especially if you're using sash weights. They can be rusty and nasty. You don't want that on the boat, or it'll gunk it up. So you can put it right in that milk crate. They're not going to go anywhere. Leave it right in the cockpit. If you roll or anything, nobody's feet are going to get crushed by weights, etc. What we're doing here for a setup, again, leader length, doing 90 to 100 feet. So about 15 poles from the lead to the bait. Okay. Doing flashy electrolume or LP lights. Okay. We're going to do a heavy swivel, 550 to 800 pound regular swivel. It does not have to be ball bearing. The bigger the swivel, the better the spin. Okay. Hook, we're doing a 12-aught to 9-aught 7691 Southern style tuna fish hook or equivalent. You can certainly use other J hooks on the market, like a 7698B or any sort of Southern style trolling hook. Some people like the Owner offshore bait hook. It has an offset tip. It's black by color. I don't think the color of the hook really matters. You just want a really nice, stout, sharp hook, something you're very comfortable with, and that you know if you get the bite or you miss it, it was just bad luck. And then for baits, we're using squids or strip baits. And I'm going to get into that here shortly, but let's just put the whole system together now. So we've got the rod, got the reel. This case is just going to illustrate an 80 wide. Okay, so we'll do a hand rod. Got the braid, okay? And you want to fill the whole reel up with braid. So if you do have a break off, you can easily just tie a loop in it, and then you can get right back to fishing. Occasionally you'll have tangles. Sometimes you'll have part offs, especially if you're fishing an area like the 100 square. Occasionally you can just hit something submerged, whatever. You want to be able to re-rig quickly. So fishing all braid, okay? Usually around 80 pound braid. We're going to do a 8-turn overhand knot to form our loop, okay? And it's just make a loop in it, bring it through 8 times, pull it tight, leave a nice long tag end so you can really grip it well, like 3 feet, cut the tag end off, and you should have a nice knot, okay? Then you're going to put your wind on through. Your wind on is going to be your leader. That's going to be anywhere from 90 to 100 feet of 200-pound mono. A little bit heavier mono there. This way it avoids the twisting, keeps your twist to a minimum. And it also, if it does get wrapped around the fish, you have something really stout for abrasion resistance. About 2 feet below the wind-on connection, okay, on the mono side. So your wind-on connection is going to be here. You're going to floss in a loop, okay? That's going to be where you're going to snap your lead. You're going to see here how I have got another picture here. This is 10 feet. I don't believe in that. I think no more than 3 to 6 feet of line from your long line clip to your lead. So it's a lot easier to control at the boat, okay? Especially if you're fishing shorthanded or you don't have an experienced crew. You want one guy to pull the lead off. He can reach his other hand, grab the lead, bring it right in the boat or in the rod holder. They have it snapped to the floss. That's important. Put it to the floss when you're day timing. You're going to get a lot less twist that way, okay? So you're going to double this up. This floss loop, I'm going to recommend 70-pound floss doubled up over itself, okay? So you have 140-pound breaking strength on your floss. That's very important when you're day timing, especially with heavy lead. Let's go back here to the lights. Okay, we're going to put 2 of them on, either the little Electrolume LP discos or the small lights. These smaller lights have a little piece of metal on the top of them. Just put the mono through the loop, take a little rubber band, half hitch it to the line, a number 16 or 32 rubber band. That's up to you, whatever you want. And you're going to put 4 poles from your swivel. The next one's going to go another four poles from the swivel. So your 4 poles from the swivel on the first one, 8 poles from the swivel on the second. You don't have to be precise about it. The reason you want the lights far away from the bait, swordfish will be blinded and you'll get a lot more misses. This comes from the guys in Florida. They've done a lot more day timing than I have. All I can say is I certainly don't think it's not true, but I've never been able to prove it. But I've always set up 4 foot from the swivel for the first light, four poles from the first light to the second light for my second light. We're going to put the heavy heavy swivel right here on the end of the wind on, and we're going to put a short leader. I don't like 15 feet. I like 6 feet. Reason being, when you get your lead to the boat, you unsnap it, you wind your wind on all the way up on the rod, your heavy swivels right at your rod tip, now you can start your end game process. This way you don't have anyone leadering. A lot of swordfish are lost at the end game because of the erratic angle changes. They can be very aggressive and very hard to control at the boat. So it's my opinion that anytime you can just make the system easier, you'll stack the odds in your favor. They're already stacked against you. So try to eliminate the wiremen, keep the system contained. On the rod, we're using wind down rods. We just have some older giant rods, some really whippy giant rods that we were using for light tackle fishing. I would suggest your daytime rod, you're going to go with silicon carbide guides and a Winthrop wind on tip. The wind on tip's really nice when you have the erratic angle changes, but the silicon carbide guides are going to be lighter and it's going to give your blank much better action. So if I were to build a daytime rod, that's how I would do it. A little bit here with the bait. I've attached this link. We're not going to go over it. It's about a 20-minute video on how to rig a squid. It's from the Booby Trap. They're a pioneering daytime boat out of the Gulf. They trained with Tim Pickett and RJ Boyle out of Florida about 10 to 12 years ago. They learned the techniques in Florida. They brought Tim Pickett and RJ out to the Gulf, and they put up some incredible numbers. The boat's now in Costa Rica, and they're doing daytiming over there with success, but they're concentrating on marlin. They spent 5 years fishing the bottom in the Gulf, and some of their days they had up to 22 bites, mostly fishing hand crank. It's really a great way to rig the bait. It involves 5 separate stitches. I'm just going to go over it really quickly and surmise it for you guys. Hook comes at the bottom of the squid. They've stitched the head into the mantle of the squid, and they have 4 additional stitches going all the way up to secure the body, and they crimp it to the top of the leader. They're using short leaders again, and this is where you just want to have a dozen leaders all ready to go, fresh baits ready to go, and rig your baits the day before the trip. That's typically what we're doing. You can even take it a step further, start rigging them up now, go get a flat of squid, or if you're using strip baits, belly baits, rig them up, get the vacuum freezer pack out, vacuum seal them, put them right in the freezer, and you're good to go. A little bit more here on the squid baits, a couple of other ways to rig them. Okay, you can see here, this was actually on a trip. We were rigging a couple of squids. We were fishing right off the bottom, catching live squid, throwing them on the deck to stun them, killing them, and then we were sewing them up, so we're fishing fresh squid. You can see here, this is a little bit fresher, and you can see the difference here. Okay, that's a freezer squid, and this is a fresh squid. You can see the difference in how it's much more clear. This is going to be more opaque. It's going to last a lot longer. And this is just another method. This is a bead method. I don't particularly like this method. Reason being is that when the sword hits and attacks the bait, it can rip the head from the mantle and detach it. For some reason, when that happens, the swords will not bite the bait anymore. So we've learned this the hard way. We tried it at Canyon Runner a few years ago. We got a bite right away, no more action. And we found that our head was detached from the mantle. So we stopped fishing that way.
Someone actually had a question before on that. How often do you switch out your baits? How often do you check them?
So we're constantly moving the bait. It's a great question. We're moving the bait the whole time. So we're going to deploy it to the bottom. Every minute or two, we're going to bring it up 50 feet, down 100 feet, constantly finding that bottom again. So we'll maybe we'll come up 100 foot in 50-foot increments, bring it up, wait a minute, bring it up 50 feet, wait a minute, bring it up another 50 feet, wait a minute, give it a minute, drop it back down. The more you move the bait, the more bites you will trigger. It's a lot of work though. So again, it's just a product of what you want to put into it. Your catches will yield that. The more and more you move the bait, the better off you are though. And it's the same thing with the nighttime fishing. You'll see the same thing. So we've shied away from this type of rigging exclusively to the stitched out bait with the hook at the bottom. We found our catches go up exponentially. And also when you're fishing squid baits, your tuna catches will increase. There's a lot of yellowfins around. You'll catch the yellowfins when you deploy the bait. And this is how a lot of these guys are catching their big eyes too. They're fishing a second rod or they're fishing a squid bait and they're catching the big eye when they're deploying the bait either up or down. Couple other baits I have here. These are just, this is a Spanish mackerel bait. They just kind of hooked it through the head. This is a zoom bait. Okay, this is something we do in giant fishing, but again, it's still applicable. You could even use this shark fishing when it's rough out, especially when the boat rocks a lot. It's a great bait. Hook's exposed, tail of the mackerel just cut off, and these are just a couple of colored squids. Again, like I said, I do shy away from this. I like to see my hook down here at the bottom of the mantle, bottom of the head, and the head sewn to the mantle. But these are all different ways of doing it. A little bit more here with the strip baits. The advantage of the strip bait, simply put, that it's a much more rugged bait. As you can see here, the guys rigging these, they're doing small little skirts right to the belly of the bait, okay? And they're sewing them shut. What's really nice about the strip bait is if you get 1 or 2 misses, that bait is still intact and you can keep fishing it. And many times we'll catch a fish. If the bait looks good, I'll just pull it right out of the fish and put it right back down, and we'll get bites right away. I'm not going to go over and how to completely rig a strip bait. We'll be here for hours. I could talk about this forever, but I just did a quick diagram here. This is a bonita belly. So they just cut off half of it. They trimmed it up to give it some shape, okay? They have the squid skirt attached. They put the hook in the bait, inverted, about 1/3 of the way down, and they start the stitching process. And that's what you can see right here. Okay, so this is the back end of the bait. This is the forward end of the bait. They slid it. They gave it about a relief cut of 1/3 of the way from the bottom, just to give it some action. And they slid their skirt right over the top. And this is the same thing, guys. You could start rigging up now for this. If you take advantage of the false albacore run or anything like that, you can use striped bass bellies, bluefish bellies. Those two hold on really, really well. This is another method here. They're doing circle hooks. I would shy away from circle hooks personally, but when you're fishing the tournaments, you are required, if you are fishing a billfish tournament, to use circle hooks. I would say with the J hooks, a lot of the hookups aren't always in the mouth. A lot of them are snags, and you want something pretty solid. So J hook is preferred, but this is the strip bait. So a lot of times, yeah.
I'm prepping that strip bait. It looks like they cut a little bit of the actual meat off, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So it's not a fillet to the bone. It's an excellent point, Adam. It's about half of the fillet. So they really just want the skin for the color and to hold the bait together, and then a little bit of meat just for scent. That's all it is. You don't need to go all the way to the bone. So this is a daytime swordfish spread. This is a 2-rod spread, but I just wanted to kind of show what we're doing and how we're fishing them. Pretend we're fishing a day with super, super light wind, okay? You don't want to have 0 wind and 0 current, otherwise you go in circles. But let's just say you have about 5 knots of wind, so there's some sort of general direction. And let's just assume the wind is coming from this direction here. So it's going to be off the starboard side. First rod, that's going to be our deep rod, okay? So let's just call it figure 10 right here. We're going to call that the tip rod. We're going to put that with the most weight. So let's just say we're going to go with 6 pounds, okay? We're going to deploy our bait. Second rod, this is a jug rod, okay? It's very important to highlight, this is not a buoy rod. We're just using an indicator, just like we're using a balloon. You'll hear some people say they're fishing buoys or they're just deploying buoys. It's illegal. So officially, certainly not going to endorse that type of fishing, anything that's illegal, but you will see them out there. So what we are doing here is just fishing 2 rods, 1 tip rod, okay? That's going to be straight up and down. And our second rod will be here, number 2, and that'll just be floated out. The way we're going to deploy this is a little bit reverse of what you think. We're going to put the first rod out, which is the rod closest to the boat. And how we're going to do that, put the boat in gear. We're going to put the bait over the side, let it come tight. We're going to clip our lead on. We're going to put the reel in free spool with slight drag and put our weight over the side. We're going to drive away from it for about 600 to 800 feet. And this is where having lines either pre-marked or having an LP, because it has the spool counter built in, will help you, show you how to deploy. You're going to put out 600 to 800 feet. You're going to pull the boat out of gear and gently back in to the rod. So you're just going to put the boat in neutral and then just tap it in reverse. While the bait's falling and the lead's falling, you're backing into the bait and it will actually get it to the bottom quicker. Okay? So you have your down rod first, your tip rod, then you're going to deploy your buoy rod. And it's important because you put extra weight here. So your buoy rod, you're going to fish with less weight, about 2/3 of the weight you're fishing for your deepest rod. Okay? So we're going to do 6, we're going to do 4 here on the buoy rod. We're going to deploy the bait, clip on our lighter weight, and then we're just going to put the boat lightly in gear. And either that means just tapping it, just like a bass speed, so anything from 3 to 5 knots. Just tap the boat in and out of gear if it's a really big boat, or if it's just an outboard boat, you might be able to just put it right clutched in and it'll just give you enough way. You're going to put your bait out, then you're going to come to your pre-marked area. So let's just say we're going to fish, if we're fishing in 1,000 feet of water, we're going to fish our tip rod at 900 feet. We're going to fish our buoy rod at 600 feet. We're going to count out 600 feet. We're going to clip on our buoy. Again, it's all pre-marked on the buoy rod. We're going to put the buoy out while we're moving. So this rod will be slightly scoped out. The buoy rod will go in. You'll, again, open up the drag again, buoy's out, keep the boat moving forward. And this way you can get out both baits. You will not get tangled because this bottom bait is so much further down than this top bait. Remember, if the boat's moving, everything is sagged up or slanted out. So this bottom bait, even though it was planned to be fishing at 900, will be closer to 6. This buoy rod, because we're in gear the whole time, will be somewhere between 100 and 300 feet, but behind the boat. And that's the key. It's the only way to get 2 rods out deployed at the same time. I would never fish 2 buoys and a deep rod, and I certainly don't recommend it. It's just too much going on at one time, unless you really have a seasoned crew, and that's going to be a decision for you guys. One thing here I've highlighted on the Canyon Runner, we have a set of cockpit controls. If you're going to do this type of fishing, I'm going to highly recommend you guys make the investment and get cockpit controls, especially if you're fishing a shorthanded crew. A lot of times, it's just myself and a mate, typically Mike, but we do have fill-in guys. I like having the cockpit controls in the cockpit so that I can help the anglers get set out, deal with the end game, etc. So if you can, add them to the boat. For us, there were electronic controls. They were pretty easy to add, and we could just take them apart when we're done with them for the day. Some people don't like the look of it, but we can also share that. I don't have a picture of it, but be happy to share it with you what we did there. But it was pretty simple, and I think it was about $1,500 when we were all said and done. It's totally worth it as far as I'm concerned. And if you're going to take this seriously, you should really consider that as well.
Hey, Dean, a quick question about those long line clips. They're all standard clips, or is there a specific size that you?
There's a bunch of different sizes, and I want to say it's about 150-pound size, but I'll send a follow-up email with the right size clip. That's not that important. There really isn't any strain on these clips. It's really minor. We're only fishing between, let's just say, 4 to 12 pounds of lead, and the fish is not hinged on it. These clips, they were manufactured for longline tuna fishing on 1,000-pound main line and 400 to 800-pound main line, and there's some serious stretch. We don't have these issues when we're day timing, but just any clip, you want something that's fairly stout, but that's not that important. But I'll certainly send an email or follow up of some kind for clip sizes. Once you get the bite, then what? So you get set up, you get out to the bottom, you set the rod, you're going to be equal distance from the bait to the lead. So what does that mean? That's typically about 100 foot. You're going to put your lead to the bottom. You're going to crank up 100 feet typically. Then what? You see here, we have this picture. Here we're all we're just around the LP. You can see slight bend in the tip. That means we're off the bottom, where we set this particular bait about 100 feet off the bottom. We're going to see a slight tap. So we're going to give it 2 to 3 minutes. If we see a tap, We're going to bring the bait up 50 feet. And all that's going to do is just gently jerk the bait. You have to remember that we're bringing the lead up 100 feet. That bait isn't going to move that much. So we're going to bring the lead up 50 feet. The bait's just going to move slightly and jerk. That swordfish will be more charged up. So all that means is when you get a tap, it's just a gentle tap on the rod. It's just the swordfish giving you a quick check. It's just checking the bait out, swatting the bill at it. They want to start and stun it, come over and eat it again. Most of the time, you'll get another additional pile on tap. Once you get that, we'll bring it up another 50 feet. If we get it again, and the rod still just looks the same as in this picture, where it just has a little bit of weight on there, and that's the lead, we're going to take the spool and put it into free spool. We're going to drop it down 100 feet, okay? So equal distance from your lead to your bait. 90% of the time, the fish will pile right back on it. And what I mean by that is they'll grab it and then they'll start to swim up, and you'll notice the rod will just come up straight slack as if the lead's gone. It's not. That's when you engage the rod, and on the LP, that means you hit the 2 red buttons. When you're fishing, your engine's are on the whole time. You want to tell your helmsman, engage the boat. You just engage it to clutch speed, and you want to get the slack out of the line. And it's very important. Everybody says braid doesn't stretch. They're right to a certain degree, but if you put out thousands of feet of line with a swordfish swimming up, even with the reel retrieving, there's a little bit of mono there. It's only about 100 feet. It's going to stretch 33%. So you've got to get past that initial 133 feet. Plus, you have to get the angle difference of the fish swimming up. Put the boat in gear, let that rod full drag, let it touch the tip of the water. Get that tip to the water, and it will on these lighter rods. Full drag, that's going to be about 50 pounds. Whale it up, put the boat in gear, give it a 30-second count. That's a long time. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It's going to feel like an eternity. Once that rod touches the water and the line starts to pull off, and it will, that means you have a real hook set. Put the boat in neutral, start fighting the fish. If it's still slack, just keep the boat in gear. Chances are the fish just happens to be swimming up and with you. You just want to get all of that slack out. Once I learned this technique, my catches went up exponentially. Getting the bite isn't that tricky. It's all about holding on to it. And that's the most important part, holding on to it and knowing when to do the right things. A couple other things when you get the bite. Let's just say rod's loaded up just like this. We'll go through this other scenario. Rod's loaded up. All of a sudden, it just slacks up. What do? Same thing. Push the drag up, put the boat in gear, get all the slack out of the rod. The other end of it is, what if I get the bait to the bottom and then all of a sudden, the rod's just peeling down. You're not stuck in the bottom. The fish grabbed you and it's swimming. Again, same thing. Push the drag up, retrieve, put the boat in gear. Now, the only exception to this is when you're setting out and all of a sudden it's as if the lead's gone. That means you got picked up when you're setting out. 99% of the time, that's going to be a tuna bite. Push the drag up, lock the reel up, and just reel. Tunas, you don't really have to drive the boat. You certainly can, but chances are when you're dropping out, when you're setting out, you're not going to be that far from the boat. The tunas will pick it up 200 feet underneath the boat to 600 feet underneath the boat. It's kind of a weird bite. But as you're setting out, you'll see it. You'll feel a little bit of tension, and then it'll be gone. And all that means is you got picked up. I want to highlight one other thing. You're not dumping the reel. So it's in free spool, but your hand should be on it, just like as if you're white marlin fishing. Just a little bit of tension on there to keep a free spool backlash from occurring. So just slight tension. That's all. Really, really light, couple of pounds at most. So again, just quick recap here, guys. You got to pay attention to the rod tip, pay attention to your drag setting, pay attention to all your equipment, and you'll get the bite. A little bit more here. I've kind of already discussed how we're setting the 2 rods, but I'm just going to go through it one more time. Okay, setting out. Once we have everything in place, we figured out the area we want to go fishing. We put the boat in gear. Before we set out, we want to just do a test drift, just so you can kind of see which way the boat is naturally going to be moved. You can move the boat a lot by manipulating the engines in and out of gear. But if you have a day like this, we just did a quick little test drift and we set out right away. Okay, so again, set the bait, put the bait out, long line clip to the lead, put it out, 800 feet, if you're fishing 1,000 feet of water, push the drag up, pull the boat into neutral, back into it, start free spooling the line, free spool into the bait, you'll be straight up and down. It's very important that even if you get to the bottom, keep backing the boat up to get straight up and down. You'll fish a lot better straight up and down. Typically with weather, you want to avoid southwest winds. Reason being, typically your current is going to run northeast to southwest. The exception to that's going to be when you're inside an eddy, where it's going to go southwest to northeast. Once you start fishing wind against tide, it really doesn't work too well. You're going to see the best catches either came on the flat calm days or on just slight north wind. And all that means is all of the current and the wind were aligned that day, typically. Okay, so that's going to be very important. Right here below, I have a direct drop setup. Direct dropping, all that means is on your hook of your bait, you're going to put a lead. So it's usually a piece of concrete with rebar. They'll put it right on the hook. And situations that call for direct drop, this is what the booby trap does a lot. If you mark wads of bait and you just caught a fish, you can set another bait without the lead. You just hook the rebar right to the bait, right to the hook, drop it right to the bottom, shake it, put the reel in free spool, engage the drag, shake the bait. The lead will come right off the rebar, and you'll have a bait presented perfectly without any lead. And that's how you can double up. I don't suggest doing it unless you really feel up to the challenge, because it can get messy quick, but it's certainly another way to do it. A little bit more here. I've already covered it, but I just want to go over it again. What we're doing with the bait, constantly moving that bait the entire time. So one of these days, this is the day we had 6. This is another day we had the big fish, and we had a couple of big eyes and a couple of smaller swords, moving the bait the whole time. So we were fishing the 2 rods, moving the bait. On our tip rod, the buoy rods, we are not moving. We're just letting those sit. The way you know if you have a bite on a buoy rod, the buoy will sit perpendicular to the water. It'll just lay over if you have a fish. Now, the way that fish will hook itself is it'll just drag the buoy. So the buoy will lay over, it'll go slack. The fish from the drag of the buoy automatically sets the hook. It's a little bit different than fishing that tip rod, and you'll get a lot of misses on the buoy as well. Again, moving that bait constantly, every couple of minutes. The daytime sword fishing is entirely a product of what you put into it. I had kind of mentioned earlier when we were fishing the structure and looking at the structure, moving around. We'll move around a fair amount. If we're not getting any bites, we're not seeing any bait, we'll just pick up and move 5 to 10 miles. It's nothing to us. But you want to be around bait. Always remember these fish, they're makos without bills. They're looking for food. That's all these things are doing, is eating every single day and night. During the day, they're looking for that bait. It's very important. Drag settings, I covered a little bit, but sunset, so that's going to be all the way at the top of the lever drag, 50 pounds. Mid strike, you want to be about 20 to 25 pounds. That should be pretty good. People say swords have soft mouths. That is true. You want to set that hook in a really good place, so in the jaw, or if you snag it in the top of the fin, which we've caught them before in the eye. You want a really solid hook set. The only way you're going to do that is with 50 pounds of drag. Really, really solid. If it can hold up to 50 pounds, chances are you're going to get them. So make sure you have solid drag. And again, get a drag scale, test it out, make sure all those variables are stacked in your favor. A little bit here with the end game. Okay, you can see we buttonholed this one. That means the dart went in one side of the fish, out the other, and fully turned. That's what a lily dart is designed to do. Okay, so what we're doing here, again, we've got the rod and the rod holder. We're looking for any way to really get the harpoon in the fish. We're using harpoons. Like I said, eliminating the wireman's crucial to catching swords. We're using all wind-on systems, even at night. And we're right at the back of the boat. You can see here, here's the rod loaded up. Fish was right here. Trying not to shoot over the leader. So you either want to shoot when the fish is up and out. So this way, and let's just say it's circling counterclockwise, fish is up and out. That would be your hole shot. Or when it came turned around and the leader was past you. You don't want to shoot over the top of the leader. That's how really dangerous things happen. Sharpness of the dart can hit the fish. Swordfish are like string cheese, okay? So when you do sharpen your darts, you want to just sharpen the tip. So the forward 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You don't want to sharpen your dart all the way to the back end because it actually can act like a knife when it turns and it can rip the dart back out. Our setup, pretty simple, 300 feet of rope, A1 poly ball. You see here, this is our buddy Dan. He was on the harpoon for this particular fish. He's very experienced. I'm going to caution you guys, use gloves. When these things take off, your hands can get wrecked. So use gloves. Good communication is important. Get the harpoon in the fish. Keep fighting him with the rod, even if you have a harpoon in there. Just lightly pull the harpoon in. If the harpoon gets wrapped around the line, unwrap. It gets wrapped around the fishing line, unwrap it. It's involved, it sucks, but you want to unwrap it. Make sure you have 2 different pull points. Very light pressure on the harpoon. All you want to do is try and stun the fish and just get a point of entry on him. Start fighting him with the rod, and then 2 heavy gaps, preferably in the head. The really big fish, 200 plus, gaff in the head to control the bill, eliminate boat damage, safer on the crew. Gaff in the tail, preferably in the last foot. Heavy tail rope, at least 1/2 inch to 5/8. Tail rope the fish, cleat it off, get the tail up as high as you can out of the water. When you are daytime sword fishing, it's going to be in the fall typically. Water's going to start to cool. There's a lot of makos around. Pay attention to your swords. Don't leave them tied off all day. Bad things can happen. You can have these makos come up and the blue sharks come up and really do some damage to your prized fish. So tie them off for a little bit. Make sure you have like a hand saw, and I'm going to get into how we're going to take care of the fish at the boat. Pay attention to it. A little bit here on taking care of the catch, okay? Just start off with fishes on the tail rope, what to do next. First thing you should be doing is getting another bait out there, okay? It's very important, get right back to fishing. Whoever's going to take care of the fish, whatever you're going to do, if you're going to do cooler and slurry it, which is just going to be salt water and ice, or if you're going to do a canyon bag, I'm going to highly recommend first thing you do, get the fish in a boat, dismantle the bill. So just get a hand saw or sawzall, typically on the bigger fish. Just cut that bill off right here, right in front of the eyes, okay? It's a lot safer on everyone. If you're fishing a teak boat of any kind, I would highly recommend you get rid of the bill. Do that, then get the knife out and start cutting out the membranes here, okay? You want to get rid of all the gills. Do a belly slit from the anus straight up to the nape, so just to the back of these pec fins here. You want to take out the inside, okay? Inside the fish, there's a bloodline that sits right on top of this skeletal mass. You want to go in there with this knife, okay? This particular knife is called a slime knife, and it allows you, it's got this rounded edge. It allows you to scrape that out with ease. You want to scrape all of that redness out. So you're going to pull out the guts, you're going to pull out the mucus, then you're going to find the bloodline. It's going to look kind of opaque white. You're going to pierce it, and then you're going to scrape out all that bloodline. That's where the fish actually starts to decompose. It's within the fish. Especially if you fought the fish for an hour or two, it's going to be really hot inside. So that's what we'll do there. One last thing, a lot of times you can see here, this fish is pretty dirty, right? They're black on the top, and then they're pretty light on the bottom. And you can see where it's worn down. Swordfish are on the bottom. There's a lot of mud. So as soon as I bring one of these fish in a boat, I take the bill off, I just get the scrub brush and I just scrub the outside of it and I just rinse it off. And you'd be amazed how much dirt comes off these fish. They're pretty dirty. So scrub it, rinse it, then go out and do sort of a field dressing. And it's really important. If the fish is going to be on ice for anything more than 12 hours, I'm going to highly recommend you remove the guts. It's really going to give you a much better product. You want to ice it the best you can while you're out there. And then when you get it home, you want to recommend to keep it on ice for at least 24 hours. preferably in the saltwater slurry. It's going to give you a much better product. It's just like any animal that you kill. The firmer it is, cooler it is, the fat will coagulate, get that temperature down. It'll cut a lot better. I gave a couple of videos here on filleting, bill removal, a couple of different really good YouTube videos on what these guys are doing. Again, this is what these guys did here. They just sort of blocked it out, the fish, and then they're starting to remove it. You can either stake it and just do sort of perpendicular cuts, or you can do what this guy's doing here, which is just straight filleting it around the skeletal mass. Each his own with that. It's one of the best eating fish around as far as I'm concerned. And they certainly are some of the coolest to chase. Have any questions at all, guys? Certainly we're open book today, but if you want to connect with us directly, email, my Instagram's up there, my Facebook, send us pictures all season, what you're doing. We want to hear about it. Any questions?
We had a bunch. We were answering them as you were going. This was great. I think important to remind everyone, everything was recorded. Like the slide before Dean had with all those YouTube videos, you'll be able to pause the recording and write those down so you can visit those presentations. We really want to just thank everyone for the 4 weekends. I mean, I was surprised we didn't have any technical difficulties. Four different weekends, 4 hours each weekend. Want to appreciate everyone's help. We'll be sending out the recordings tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, everyone has provided their email address. We really mean this. Everyone's responsive. If you have a question, just reach out to any of us. And on that note, hope everyone's out there. I know actually half our crew today is on the boat getting ready to put in the water. Tomorrow, we're not fishing yet, but there's some water out there. It looks like it might be an early season offshore, folks. So get your boats ready and get going. I want to personally thank each and every one of my speakers who Dean and I want to thank everybody. Dean, obviously, I thank you. You did a bunch of this, but the folks that aren't on here for the other weekends, everyone did a great job. Freddie, it was great having you. And everyone take care. Bye, guys.